Stop. Before you try to learn anything new, you need to hear this. Your brain is not slow. Your memory is not bad. Your focus is not broken. You were simply never taught how to use your mind. From childhood, you were told to study harder, read more, repeat more, push more. But no one taught you how memory actually forms. No one taught you how attention works. No one showed you how the brain learns, stores, and retrieves knowledge. So you tried effort, when the real answer was method. You thought the problem was discipline, but the problem was design. Because your brain is not a container to be filled. It is a system to be trained. And once you understand that, everything changes. Learning stops feeling heavy. Memory stops leaking. Focus stops fighting you. Your mind begins to work with you, not against you. In this audiobook, you are not going to study better. You are going to rebuild how your brain operates. You will learn how to control attention, how to make information stick like glue, how to think in systems instead of scattered facts, and how to turn knowledge into real-world power. This is not about becoming a genius. This is about becoming efficient. Because when your brain becomes efficient, your life accelerates. Faster learning, stronger memory, clearer thinking, greater confidence. Not through talent, through understanding. The brain you were taught to use is outdated. Now, we build the one that actually works. Let's begin. Everything you believed about learning started with a misunderstanding. School trained you to consume information, but your brain was built to transform information. You were rewarded for remembering facts long enough to pass a test, not for building a mind that keeps knowledge for life. So you developed the wrong relationship with learning. You learned to associate learning with effort, pressure, and fatigue. You learned that focus means forcing yourself. You learned that memory is a talent some people have, and others don't. But none of that is true. Your brain is not a passive recorder. It is not a hard drive. It is not a container waiting to be filled. Your brain is a prediction machine. It learns by spotting patterns. It remembers what feels meaningful. It keeps what seems useful for survival and deletes what looks irrelevant. This is why you can remember a conversation from years ago but forget what you studied last week. Not because you're bad at learning, but because your brain didn't see a reason to keep it. You were told learning is about repetition, but repetition without meaning is noise. You were told to reread, highlight, review. But recognition is not memory. Seeing something again creates familiarity. Familiarity creates the illusion of knowing. But illusion collapses under pressure. True learning is not when information feels familiar. True learning is when you can retrieve it without help. That difference changes everything. Your brain strengthens what it retrieves, not what it resees. This is why cramming fails. You pour information in, but never build the pathways to get it back out. Imagine walking through a forest once. There is no path. Walk it again and again, clearing branches, stepping the same ground. Now there is a trail. That trail is memory. And memory is not built by input. It is built by mental effort during retrieval. But here's the deeper mistake. You were taught to treat learning as an event. Your brain treats learning as a biological change. Every time you think, recall, connect, or struggle to understand, your neurons rewire. Learning is not mental. It is physical. Your brain literally reshapes itself based on how you use it. This is called neuroplasticity. But you don't need the word. You just need the truth. The brain you have today is the result of yesterday's habits. The brain you will have next year is the result of today's habits. You don't have a bad memory. You have untrained memory pathways. You don't have poor focus. You have overstimulated attention circuits. You don't lack intelligence. You lack efficient mental systems. And systems can be built. Think about athletes. They don't just try harder. They train specific muscles. They train reaction speed. They train recovery. Learning is the same, but instead of training attention, recall, and processing, you were trained to sit still and absorb. That's like going to the gym and watching other people lift weights. Your brain grows through strain, not comfort. Strain means trying to recall without looking, explaining without notes, solving without hints, connecting ideas yourself. That slight mental discomfort, that's your brain upgrading. But school trained you to avoid that discomfort. You were taught to look back at the answer immediately. That habit killed your memory strength. Because every time you stop struggling early, you stop the growth signal. Your brain says, not important, no need to build stronger connections. And it lets the information fade. So you built a pattern of shallow learning. Input, forget, repeat, forget again. But once you understand how the brain truly learns, the cycle breaks. You stop measuring learning by time spent. You measure it by mental engagement. You stop asking, did I read this? You start asking, can I explain this? You stop trying to cover more material. You start trying to understand fewer things deeply. And suddenly, learning becomes lighter, because you're no longer fighting your brain's design. You're working with it. Your brain loves patterns, connections, meaning, emotion, stories, questions, effortful recall. It hates passive rereading, multitasking, information overload, distraction, meaningless repetition. Most learning fails, not because people are incapable, but because they use methods their brain was never designed for. You don't need to become smarter. You need to become strategic. Once you do, something powerful happens. Learning speeds up. Memory lasts longer. Focus feels easier. Because you're no longer dragging information uphill. You're building downhill pathways where recall flows naturally. And this is where your advantage begins. Because most people never question how they were taught. They just try harder. You are about to do something different. You are about to train the machine itself. And once the machine upgrades, everything you learn after this becomes easier than anything you learned before. This is not a motivation problem. This is a mechanics problem. Fix the mechanics, and learning becomes a superpower. And now that you understand this, we move to the real control lever, attention. Because memory doesn't begin with repetition. Memory begins with what your mind allows in. And that is what we train next. Before your brain remembers anything, it must first notice it. Attention is the gatekeeper of memory. If information doesn't pass through attention, it never becomes memory, no matter how smart you are, no matter how long you study. This is where most people lose. They try to improve memory without ever training attention. But memory is downstream. Attention is upstream. If the river is blocked at the source, nothing flows. Think about the last time you read a page and reached the bottom with no idea what you just read. Your eyes moved. Your brain processed words. But attention wasn't there. And without attention, nothing encoded. The brain cannot store what the mind never truly saw. Attention is not just focus. Attention is mental priority. Your brain is constantly deciding, is this important enough to keep, or is this background noise? And that decision happens in seconds. Your brain is a survival machine. It evolved to filter aggressively. There is too much input in the world. So the brain keeps only what seems useful, emotional, or relevant. Everything else is deleted. That's why you remember arguments, embarrassing moments, and emotional conversations, but forget lectures. Emotion forces attention. Attention creates memory. Most people think they have bad memory. What they actually have is scattered attention. Modern life destroys attention strength. Notifications, scrolling, multitasking, constant switching. Every switch costs mental energy. Every interruption breaks encoding. Every distraction trains the brain to stay shallow. The more you fragment attention, the more your brain becomes addicted to novelty and allergic to depth. And depth is where memory forms. Multitasking is the biggest lie in modern learning. The brain cannot do two cognitive tasks at once. It switches rapidly, and every switch drops information. Imagine trying to write with someone bumping your arm every 10 seconds. That's what distraction does to memory. Efficient learners don't try to fight distraction with willpower. They remove it before learning begins. Because attention is easier to protect than to recover. Put the phone away. Close tabs. Silence notifications. Clear your space. These are not productivity tricks. They are memory optimization tools. Your environment trains your brain. A chaotic space creates chaotic thinking. A focused space signals importance. Your brain responds to signals, but external noise is only half the battle. Internal noise is louder. Worry, overthinking, future planning, past replaying. Your mind can distract you more than your phone. This is why presence matters. Presence means keeping attention in the moment long enough for encoding to happen. You build presence the same way you build stamina. Start small. 10 minutes of deep focus is more powerful than an hour of drifting. Then grow it. 15 minutes. 20. 30. Your attention span is trainable, just like a muscle. Another key to attention is intention. Your brain pays more attention when it knows why something matters. Before learning, ask, what do I need from this? What problem does this solve? How could I use this? These questions wake the brain up. They create relevance. And relevance tells the brain, keep this. Passive consumption kills attention. Your brain wanders because it has no job. You must give it work. Pause and summarize. Ask questions while reading. Predict what comes next. Explain ideas in your head. When your brain participates, attention locks in. There's also a physical side. Attention runs on energy. Sleep deprivation shrinks focus. Dehydration slows processing. Stress narrows awareness. You cannot expect a tired brain to focus like a trained one. Attention is a biological resource. Protect it. But here is the most important truth. Attention is a choice. You choose what gets your mind. Every scroll, every click, every distraction. You train your attention habits daily. Some people train shallow attention. Fast, reactive, scattered. Others train deep attention. Steady, deliberate, controlled. Both are built over time, and only one leads to mastery. When attention strengthens, everything changes. Reading becomes faster. Understanding deepens. Memory improves automatically, because encoding becomes clean. You stop rereading the same page. You stop forgetting what you learned yesterday. Your brain starts keeping what you feed it. This is the hidden advantage of high performers. Not higher IQ, stronger attention control. They decide what enters their mind and what doesn't. Memory is not forced. Memory follows attention. Sharpen attention, and memory follows like a shadow. Ignore attention, and memory leaks no matter how hard you try. So before you train memory techniques, train attention. Protect it. Direct it. Strengthen it. Because attention is not just a skill. It is a competitive advantage. And once you control it, learning accelerates without extra effort. Now that attention is trained, we move to the next shift: how to turn information into understanding instead of just data. Most people don't have a learning problem. They have a training problem. They study. They consume. They reread. They highlight. And they call it learning. But the brain doesn't upgrade from exposure. It upgrades from effortful use. Studying feels productive because it is comfortable. Training feels difficult because it works. There is a massive difference between "I've seen this before" and "I can use this under pressure." Recognition is not knowledge. Recognition is familiarity. You recognize a song after 1 second. You recognize a face in a crowd. You recognize a quote you highlighted last week. But recognition is the weakest form of memory. It gives the illusion of mastery without the substance. Training is different. Training forces the brain to retrieve, organize, apply, and adapt. That process strengthens neural circuits. Rereading is easy. Retrieving from memory without looking is hard. Hard is where learning lives. When the brain struggles to recall something, it sends a signal. This matters. Strengthen this pathway. Effort is the growth trigger. This is why students can read a chapter 3 times and still forget everything during a test. They studied. They never trained. Studying asks, "Does this look familiar?" Training asks, "Can I produce this from nothing?" One builds confidence, illusions. The other builds real ability. If you want to upgrade your brain, switch from input mode to output mode. After learning something, close the book. Explain it from memory, out loud if possible. If you can't explain it clearly, you don't understand it yet. That's not failure. That's feedback. Feedback is where the brain adapts. Another form of training is application. Knowledge that never touches reality evaporates. The brain stores what it uses. If you learn a communication skill, use it today. If you learn a productivity method, try it tonight. If you learn a memory trick, test it immediately. Speed of application determines strength of retention. Delay kills memory. The brain assumes unused information is unimportant. Training also means practicing under friction. Learning something in a calm, quiet environment is step one. Using it while stressed, busy, distracted, or under time pressure is step two. Real skill survives friction. That's why athletes don't just practice moves slowly. They practice under game conditions. Your brain needs pressure rehearsal too. Explain concepts without notes. Solve problems with time limits. Speak ideas in real conversations. Training builds adaptability. Studying builds dependency. Here's another shift. Stop aiming for perfection before action. Perfection delays practice. And practice is the only thing that builds skill. Action reveals gaps. Gaps reveal what to improve. Improvement compounds. Training is a loop. Attempt feedback. Adjust. Repeat. Every loop strengthens circuits. Most people stay stuck in theory because theory feels safe. Practice feels exposing. But exposure is where growth lives. There's also the identity shift. If you see yourself as someone trying to learn, your behavior stays passive. If you see yourself as someone who trains their mind, your behavior changes. Identity shapes effort. Effort shapes ability. Ability reinforces identity. That loop builds a high-performance brain. Training also reduces forgetting. Why? Because retrieval strengthens storage. Every time you pull information from memory, you make it easier to pull again. Memory is not a container. It's a pathway, and pathways strengthen with use. This is why teaching is powerful training. When you teach, you must retrieve, organize, simplify, and explain. That combination forces deep processing. Teachers learn faster than students because teaching is constant training. You don't need an audience. Teach an imaginary person. Write a summary. Record yourself explaining. Output converts knowledge into structure. Structure makes memory durable. Training also changes how the brain handles difficulty. When you repeatedly face mental challenge, the brain stops interpreting difficulty as threat. It begins interpreting difficulty as growth. That psychological shift removes resistance to hard learning. You stop avoiding complexity. You lean into it. That's when your brain accelerates. Passive learners avoid difficulty. Active trainers chase it. Because difficulty signals adaptation. The brain upgrades under strain, not comfort. So, the real question isn't, how long did you study? It's, how many training reps did your brain do? Reps of retrieval, reps of explanation, reps of application, reps of adjustment. Each rep rewires you. Each rep builds mental strength. Once you understand this, learning stops being about time. It becomes about intensity of engagement. 30 minutes of training beats 3 hours of passive study. Because training changes the brain. Studying fills time. From now on, after every learning session, ask, how did I train this knowledge? If the answer is, I just read it, you didn't train. And if you don't train, the brain does not upgrade. But when you switch modes, information stops slipping away. It becomes usable, reliable, ready on demand. That is the difference between knowing and being capable. And now that you train instead of study, we move to the next layer. How to make information stick like glue instead of slide off your mind. Most information doesn't disappear because your memory is weak. It disappears because it never attached to anything. The brain is not built to store isolated facts. It is built to store connections. If information has no hooks, it slides away. If information connects to something you already know, it sticks. Memory is not about repetition first. It's about association first. Your brain is a network, not a box. Boxes store things separately. Networks store things together. The stronger the links, the stronger the memory. Think about this. You can remember a childhood friend's face from 20 years ago, but you forget a phone number after 10 seconds. Why? One is connected to emotion, stories, places, experiences. The other is just random digits. Meaning creates memory. Connection creates retention. The more ways you connect an idea, the more pathways lead back to it. And more pathways mean faster recall. So how do you make knowledge sticky? You give the brain something it loves: images, emotion, location, story, comparison. Let's start with imagery. The brain remembers pictures better than words. Words are abstract. Images are sensory. If you learn the concept of growth mindset, imagine a small plant cracking through concrete. Now the idea has a visual anchor. Visual anchors give memory a shape. Shape is easier to recall than abstraction. Next is emotion. The brain tags emotional experiences as important. You remember embarrassment, excitement, fear, joy. Emotion tells the brain, keep this. Even mild emotion works. Curiosity, surprise, amusement. When something surprises you, your brain pays attention differently. Attention plus emotion equals durable memory. Then comes location. This is why the memory palace works. The brain remembers places effortlessly. You can walk through your home in your mind without effort. If you mentally place ideas in rooms, the brain uses spatial memory to retrieve them. Information tied to space becomes easier to navigate. Story is another powerful glue. A list of facts fades. A story stays. Stories create sequence, meaning, cause and effect. Your brain evolved to understand survival through narrative. When ideas become part of a story, they gain structure. Structure prevents forgetting. Then there is comparison. The brain learns new things by relating them to known things. This idea is like, this system works like, comparison builds bridges. Bridges reduce cognitive distance. When distance shrinks, understanding grows. And understanding strengthens memory. Another powerful glue is exaggeration. The brain notices unusual things. If you want to remember someone named Rose, Imagine them with a giant rose growing out of their head. Ridiculous, yes. Memorable, absolutely. Normal is forgettable. Strange is sticky. Then there's chunking. Chunking groups information into meaningful units. A phone number becomes easier when split into parts. The brain handles clusters better than fragments. Experts don't memorize more facts. They build larger chunks. Chunks reduce mental load and increase recall speed. But the deepest glue of all is meaning. If the brain does not understand why something matters, it won't keep it. Relevance is the filter of memory. Ask, how does this help me? Where would I use this? What problem does this solve? These questions turn abstract knowledge into personal knowledge. Personal knowledge sticks. Detached knowledge fades. Here's something else most people miss. Forgetting is natural. The brain is designed to forget noise. But when you reconnect with information right before it disappears, you strengthen it. This is why spaced repetition works. The act of retrieving something as it starts to fade tells the brain, don't delete this. That effort builds durability. Easy recall doesn't strengthen memory much. Effortful recall does. Effort is the glue activator. Another reason information slips away is passive exposure. Watching, reading, listening without interaction creates weak encoding. Interaction strengthens attachment. Pause. Summarize. Explain. Visualize. Connect. Each action adds glue. The more glue, the stronger the hold. Memory is not about capacity. It's about connectivity. You don't need a bigger brain. You need a better web. A web holds what it catches. A box loses what it stores. When you start learning this way, memory becomes creative instead of mechanical. You stop forcing information in. You start building a network. And networks grow. They compound. Each new idea attaches to existing nodes. Over time, recall becomes faster because there are many paths back to the idea. That's why experts remember more easily. They have more connection points. Beginners struggle because ideas float without anchors. So, your job isn't to push harder. It's to connect smarter. From now on, every time you learn something, ask, what does this remind me of? What image represents this? What story could hold this? Where does this fit? Each question adds a hook. Hooks prevent loss. Loss creates frustration. Connection creates confidence. And confidence fuels faster learning. Once information sticks like glue, the brain stops leaking knowledge. It starts compounding it. And when knowledge compounds, your mind becomes an engine, not a container. Now we move deeper, from sticky knowledge to structured intelligence. Because remembering facts is one level, but thinking in systems, that's where real mental power begins. Information alone does not make you smart. Structure does. Most people's minds look like a storage room where things were thrown in over the years. Facts here. Quotes there. Ideas scattered everywhere. Nothing is connected. Nothing is organized. Nothing is easy to retrieve. That's why under pressure, their mind goes blank. Not because they don't know enough, because their knowledge has no structure. The brain does not think in lists. It thinks in systems. A system is a set of ideas connected in a meaningful way. Systems give information a place to live. Without systems, knowledge floats. Floating knowledge is fragile. System-based knowledge is durable. Think about a city. If you memorize 50 random street names, you'll forget most of them. But if you understand how the city is laid out, districts, main roads, landmarks, you can navigate anywhere because you have a map. Mental systems are maps. They tell the brain, this goes here. That connects to this. This causes that. Structure reduces confusion, and confusion is the enemy of recall. Experts in any field are not walking encyclopedias. They are system thinkers. A chess master does not memorize every possible move. They understand patterns. A doctor does not memorize every symptom individually. They understand systems of the body. A business strategist does not memorize random tactics. They understand how parts influence the whole. Systems compress complexity. Compression reduces cognitive load, and lower cognitive load means faster thinking. Here's what happens without systems. You learn something new. Your brain asks, where does this belong? If there's no answer, the idea fades. If there's a system, the idea plugs in. Plugging in creates retention. Random learning leads to overload. System learning leads to clarity. That's why beginners feel overwhelmed, while experts feel organized. Experts don't know less. They know where things go. Systems also speed up future learning. When you have a structure, new information attaches faster. It's like building with Lego blocks. Once the base exists, new pieces fit easily. Without a base, every new piece feels like chaos. This is why learning accelerates over time for people who build systems. Knowledge starts compounding. Now, how do you build mental systems? You stop asking only, what is this? And start asking, how does this work? What causes what? What are the parts? How do they interact? These questions reveal structure. Another powerful tool is categorization. The moment the brain assigns something to a category, it becomes easier to remember. Category creates belonging. Belonging creates connection. Connection creates recall. Hierarchy is also critical. Big ideas first. Details later. Most people try to memorize details before understanding the big picture. That's backwards. The brain needs branches before leaves. Principles first. Examples second. When you understand principles, details become easy to attach. Without principles, details fall away. Systems also allow transfer. Transfer is real intelligence. Transfer means using what you know in a different situation. If you only remember facts, you can repeat. If you understand systems, you can adapt. Adaptability is mental power. Another advantage of system thinking is decision speed. When the brain recognizes a pattern inside a system, it doesn't have to think from scratch. It sees structure and responds. That's intuition. Intuition is compressed system knowledge. It feels instant because the structure is already built. Without systems, every decision feels heavy. With systems, thinking becomes efficient. Systems also reduce anxiety during learning. Because chaos creates stress. Structure creates control. When your brain sees order, it relaxes. Relaxation improves memory. Stress blocks it. Most people collect information. Few people organize it. Collectors feel busy. System builders become powerful. From now on, don't just take notes. Reorganize notes. Turn ideas into diagrams. Turn concepts into frameworks. Turn knowledge into maps. Maps guide thought. Thought becomes clearer. Clarity accelerates learning. When you shift from fact collector to system builder, your mind changes. You stop drowning in information. You start navigating it. And when your brain can navigate knowledge, learning becomes lighter. Thinking becomes sharper. And intelligence stops being about memory and becomes about structure. Next, we unlock another powerful layer. How to turn all this knowledge into something even stronger than memory skill. Knowledge by itself is light. It feels impressive. It sounds intelligent. It fills conversations. But knowledge alone does not change your life. Only applied knowledge does. There is a quiet illusion many people live inside. They read. They watch. They listen. They understand. And they believe they are growing. But understanding without action is mental decoration. It decorates the mind without strengthening it. The brain does not reward knowing. The brain rewards doing. Action is the bridge between information and transformation. Without that bridge, knowledge stays abstract. Abstract knowledge fades. Applied knowledge hardens. The moment you use an idea, your brain treats it differently. It stops being theory. It becomes experience. Experience leaves stronger neural traces than thought. That is why you remember how to ride a bicycle even after years. But you forget facts you read last week. Skill memory is deeper than information memory, because skill lives in action circuits, not just thinking circuits. If you want knowledge to become power, you must convert ideas into behavior quickly. Speed of application determines strength of learning. The longer you wait to use something, the weaker it becomes. The brain assumes unused information is irrelevant. Relevance drives retention. Here's the shift. After learning something, ask, how do I use this today, not someday? Not when I'm ready. Today, small application beats perfect planning. Perfect planning delays action. Delay weakens memory. Action creates feedback. Feedback creates adaptation. Adaptation creates growth. Growth creates power. Power is not information stored. Power is capability built. There's another layer. Practice must be deliberate. Repeating something mindlessly does little. Deliberate practice isolates weakness. It asks, what part am I bad at? What needs improvement? What am I avoiding? That is where skill grows. Comfort repeats what you already know. Deliberate practice improves what you don't. That's why it feels uncomfortable. Discomfort signals neural upgrade. Your brain strengthens where it struggles. Avoiding struggle avoids growth. Knowledge becomes power when it survives real-world friction. Learning something in perfect conditions is stage 1. Using it while stressed, busy, distracted, or uncertain is stage 2. Real life is not a classroom. So training must include friction. Speak the language in conversation, not just study it. Use productivity tools during real deadlines. Apply communication skills in difficult discussions. Friction tests skill. Skill that survives friction becomes reliable. Reliable ability builds confidence. Confidence feeds performance. Performance reinforces identity. Identity stabilizes skill. Identity is the hidden multiplier. If you learn coding but don't see yourself as a programmer, you hesitate to act. If you study investing but don't see yourself as an investor, you avoid decisions. Identity drives behavior. Behavior drives repetition. Repetition builds skill. Skill strengthens identity. This loop creates mastery. Most people interrupt this loop. They learn, but don't act. They act once, then stop. They get feedback, but don't adjust. Without adjustment, skill stagnates. The power loop is simple. Action, feedback, adjustment, repeat. Each cycle upgrades you. Feedback is not criticism. Feedback is data. Data refines performance. The brain grows fastest when mistakes are examined, not avoided. Mistakes show where circuits are weak. Correcting them strengthens circuits. Knowledge also becomes power when applied across different contexts. If you use an idea in only one situation, it stays fragile. Use it in many situations. It becomes flexible. Flexibility is intelligence in motion. That's why great thinkers transfer principles across fields. Principles applied widely become mental tools. Tools create leverage. Leverage creates power. Timing matters too. Application should follow learning closely. Immediate use stabilizes memory. Delayed use weakens it. Use knowledge while it's fresh, and it roots deeper. The final stage is automation. At first, you think through each step. Later, the brain handles steps in the background. Driving, typing, speaking, solving. Automation frees mental energy. Freed energy allows higher-level thinking. Stacked automations create expertise. The expert does not think harder. They think at a higher level because fundamentals are automatic. This is the real transformation. You stop trying to remember. You start being able to perform. Knowledge turns into reflex. Reflex becomes competence. Competence becomes power. Here's the truth many miss. Learning feels intellectual. Power feels practical. The bridge between them is repetition in reality, not repetition in theory. From now on, measure learning differently. Don't ask, how much did I understand? Ask, what did I do with it? If the answer is nothing, the brain did not upgrade. But when knowledge moves into action, your thinking sharpens. Your confidence rises. Your decisions improve. Your results change. Because knowledge finally stopped being decoration. It became capability. And capability is the real definition of mental power. Next, we move deeper still, because a powerful mind is not built by technique alone. It is built by the condition of the brain itself. You cannot run advanced software on broken hardware. And yet, that is exactly what most people try to do. They want better focus with poor sleep, better memory with unstable energy, better thinking inside chronic stress. Then they blame themselves for not being disciplined enough. But the issue is not discipline. The issue is the state of the brain itself. Learning is not only mental, it is biological. Your brain is not a concept. It is living tissue. And tissue has conditions. When the biological conditions are poor, cognitive performance drops, no matter how motivated you are. A tired brain does not learn well. A stressed brain does not think clearly. An undernourished brain does not remember efficiently. You don't upgrade the mind without upgrading the machine. Let's start with sleep. Sleep is not rest. Sleep is neural maintenance. During deep sleep, the brain does three critical things. It consolidates memory. It clears metabolic waste. It resets emotional balance. When you learn something during the day, the memory is fragile. Sleep is what stabilizes it. Without sleep, learning stays temporary. This is why studying late into the night while sacrificing sleep often leads to forgetting. You're trying to store information without activating the storage process. Sleep is not a break from learning. Sleep is part of learning. Poor sleep weakens attention, slows processing speed, reduces working memory, and increases emotional reactivity. All of those directly block learning. Strong sleep creates clarity, faster thinking, and more stable focus. Sleep is not optional for mental performance. It is foundational. Next is nutrition. Your brain represents a small part of your body weight, but it consumes a huge share of your energy. It runs on glucose stability, healthy fats, amino acids, micronutrients, and hydration. When blood sugar spikes and crashes, attention fluctuates. When dehydration rises, thinking slows. When nutrition is poor, neurotransmitter production suffers. Neurotransmitters are the chemicals that allow brain cells to communicate. No communication, no cognition. Many people think they lack focus. Often, they lack fuel. Stable energy equals stable attention. Stable attention equals better learning. Food is not just body fuel. It is brain fuel. Now, movement. Physical movement increases blood flow to the brain. More blood flow means more oxygen. More oxygen means better processing. Movement also stimulates brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a molecule that supports neuron growth and survival. In simple terms, movement helps the brain adapt. Even short activity can increase mental clarity. A stagnant body often creates a sluggish mind. The brain and body are deeply connected systems. Activating one activates the other. Then there is stress. Short bursts of stress can sharpen performance. Chronic stress destroys it. Long-term stress floods the brain with cortisol. Cortisol impairs memory formation, reduces creativity, and narrows attention. The brain under chronic stress shifts into survival mode. Survival mode prioritizes threat detection, not learning. Curiosity shuts down. Flexibility shrinks. Mental bandwidth decreases. You cannot build complex knowledge when your brain is focused on defense. Learning requires psychological safety. Managing stress is not luxury. It is cognitive maintenance. Breathing techniques, mental reframing, movement, and recovery periods all help regulate the nervous system. A regulated brain learns. A threatened brain protects. Protection blocks growth. Another factor is digital overload. Constant notifications and multitasking fragment attention. Every time attention switches, the brain pays a cost. These micro-costs accumulate into fatigue. Fatigue reduces learning capacity. Protecting your brain means controlling its inputs. Attention is energy. Where you direct it shapes your cognition. Environment also matters. Cluttered spaces create mental noise. Clean, organized environments reduce cognitive friction. Lighting, air quality, noise levels all influence brain performance. You are not just designing a workspace. You are designing a cognitive environment. Rest is also essential. Not just sleep, but mental rest. The brain needs periods of low stimulation to integrate information. Daydreaming, walking, quiet time, these are not wasted. They are processing phases. Many insights emerge during rest because the brain reorganizes what it learned. Without rest, learning remains surface level. Social environment plays a role too. Conversation stimulates memory and reasoning. Discussion strengthens understanding. Isolation can reduce cognitive stimulation. Interaction challenges and refines thought. Finally, mindset affects biology. Chronic negative thinking sustains stress chemistry. Stress chemistry affects cognition. Belief patterns influence neural states. A brain fed constant helplessness operates differently than one fed purpose. The hardware of the brain is shaped by both physical and mental inputs. The message is simple. If you try to upgrade your mind without upgrading your biological base, you are working uphill. But when sleep supports memory, nutrition stabilizes energy, movement boosts oxygen, stress is regulated, and the environment reduces friction, learning becomes easier, focus becomes natural, memory becomes stronger, thinking becomes smoother. The brain performs closer to its true potential. You don't just study better. You exist in a state where learning is supported. And when the hardware is upgraded, every mental strategy works better. Next, we step into the modern question: how to use technology as an amplifier without letting it weaken the mind. Technology can multiply your intelligence or quietly dismantle it. The difference is not in the tools, it's in how you use them. Your brain evolved for focus, depth, and pattern recognition. Modern technology is designed for speed, novelty, and interruption. If you use tech unconsciously, your attention fragments. And when attention fragments, memory weakens. When memory weakens, learning collapses. So the question is not, is technology good or bad? The real question is, does this tool support thinking or replace it? Technology should amplify cognition, not outsource it. The brain is brilliant at reasoning, creativity, and abstraction, but it is inefficient at storage, reminders, and large data tracking. Technology excels where the brain struggles. That's the partnership. Let tech store. Let your brain think. But many people reverse this. They let tech think for them and fill their brain with noise. Search engines replace curiosity. Notes replace understanding. Reminders replace responsibility. The brain becomes dependent. Dependency weakens internal structure. You don't want crutches. You want extensions. A calculator doesn't make you worse at math if you understand math. But if you never learned math and only use a calculator, your reasoning stays shallow. The same applies to learning tools. Spaced repetition apps help memory, but you must still retrieve actively. Note-taking software helps organization, but you must still process ideas deeply. Task managers help clarity, but you must still choose priorities. Tools must support effort, not remove it. If a tool removes mental effort completely, it removes mental growth. There is also another danger: passive digital consumption. Watching educational content feels like learning, but passive input rarely upgrades the brain. The brain upgrades through output: writing, explaining, solving, creating. Input alone builds familiarity. Output builds mastery. If technology turns you into a consumer, your brain stays shallow. If it helps you produce, your brain strengthens. Another key principle: choose your tools. Don't let them choose you. Notifications are not neutral. Every alert is an attention theft. Each theft carries a switching cost. Switching costs accumulate into cognitive fatigue. Fatigue reduces learning efficiency. A powerful rule: tools you open intentionally are allies. Tools that open themselves are enemies. Disable non-essential notifications. Schedule tech use instead of reacting to it. Attention is your most valuable cognitive resource. Protect it. Technology can also enhance structure. Digital note systems, mind maps, flashcards, and knowledge databases can help organize learning. Organization reduces cognitive load. Lower load improves processing. But organization without review is storage. Storage without retrieval is forgetting. Tech must support the full learning loop: capture, process, retrieve, apply. If one step is missing, learning weakens. Another benefit of technology is data tracking. You can track sleep, focus time, practice hours. Patterns become visible. The brain experiences life subjectively. Technology reveals it objectively. Awareness leads to adjustment. Adjustment leads to improvement. But data without reflection is useless. Metrics guide behavior only when interpreted. Technology should provide insight, not overwhelm. Also separate input tools and output tools. Input tools: books, lectures, course. Output tools: writing apps, flashcards, problem-solving software. Growth happens in output. Input feeds the brain. Output strengthens it. Balance both. There is also power in hybrid learning. Use digital tools for storage and speed. Use analog methods for depth and presence. Writing by hand slows thinking just enough to improve processing. Digital systems improve retrieval. Together they create balance. Another essential rule: never let technology eliminate struggle. Struggle builds neural strength. If a tool makes everything effortless, You may gain convenience, but lose capability. Use tools to remove friction that doesn't build skill. Keep friction that does. For example, use tech to block distractions. But don't use tech to skip thinking. Use tech to store notes, but not to avoid summarizing. Use tech to review, but not to avoid retrieval. The brain must stay the driver. Technology is the engine support. When tools extend your mind, you become more capable. When tools replace your mind, you become dependent. The goal is not to avoid technology. It's to use it deliberately. When used correctly, technology becomes one of the greatest cognitive multipliers in history. It can organize your knowledge, protect your focus, structure your learning, and free mental energy for deeper thinking. But only if you stay in control. Because once your attention becomes a product, your cognition becomes fragmented. And fragmented attention cannot build deep memory. Deep memory requires sustained focus. Sustained focus requires boundaries. Boundaries protect intelligence. When you master technology instead of letting it master you, your mind sharpens instead of scatters. Now we move to the final transformation, not just learning better, but becoming someone whose brain compounds over time. Most people treat learning like an event, a course, a book, a period of motivation. Then it stops. Weeks pass. Months pass. Nothing builds on what came before. This is linear learning. You start. You stop. You restart. Each time, you begin almost from zero. But there is another way to grow mentally. A way where knowledge does not simply add. It multiplies. This is the path of the compound learner. Compounding is not only financial, it is cognitive. When knowledge is retained, connected, and used, each new idea has more places to attach. That attachment speeds learning, and faster learning accelerates growth. The compound learner doesn't just know more over time. They become better at learning itself. And that is the true advantage. At first, learning feels slow for everyone. But after years of compounding, progress becomes exponential. Why? Because nothing is floating anymore. Ideas don't drift through the mind. They plug into existing structures. Imagine trying to build a city. If you forget the streets every year, you rebuild from scratch. But if the streets remain, you just add neighborhoods. That is the compound mind. Most people don't struggle with intelligence. They struggle with knowledge decay. They consume information, but never reinforce it. So the brain deletes it. The compound learner understands a simple truth. Exposure does not create growth. Retention does. They revisit important ideas. They retrieve knowledge without prompts. They reconnect concepts across time. Each review strengthens pathways. Each pathway becomes a mental shortcut. Shortcuts reduce thinking effort. Reduced effort increases speed. Speed increases confidence. Confidence fuels continued learning. That is the compounding loop. Another difference is consistency. Compound learners don't rely on bursts of motivation. They rely on daily contact with learning. Small, steady inputs. 10 pages a day becomes thousands per year. 20 minutes of practice becomes over 100 hours. The brain responds more to frequency than intensity. Frequent contact keeps pathways active. Inactive pathways weaken. Consistency is mental reinforcement. Reinforcement builds durability. Durability enables compounding. Identity plays a massive role. A compound learner does not say, "I'm trying to learn more." They think, "I am someone who learns every day." Identity removes decision fatigue. Learning becomes automatic behavior. Automatic behavior produces long-term volume. Volume produces compounding. Curiosity fuels the engine. Without curiosity, learning feels forced. With curiosity, learning feels alive. Compound learners ask questions constantly. Why does this work? How does this connect? What principle is behind this? Questions activate deep processing. Deep processing strengthens memory. Memory strengthens structure. Structure accelerates new learning. Curiosity is the ignition key of compounding. Application is another multiplier. Knowledge not used is knowledge lost. The brain assumes unused information is irrelevant. When you apply ideas in real life, you tell the brain, "Keep this." Application transforms theory into experience. Experience leaves deeper neural traces. Deep traces resist forgetting. Resisted forgetting enables compounding. Compound learners also reflect. Reflection converts activity into understanding. Without reflection, experience remains raw. With reflection, it becomes insight. Insight connects learning across time. At the end of learning sessions, they ask, "What changed my thinking? How can I use this? What did this connect to?" Reflection is mental digestion. Digestion extracts nutrients. Undigested learning passes through. Another key trait is revisiting. Most people finish a book once and move on. Compound learners return to powerful material. Each return happens with a more advanced brain. Old ideas reveal deeper layers. Layers build structure. Structure supports faster integration later. Revisiting is not redundancy. It is reinforcement. Reinforcement drives compounding. Adaptability also matters. Rigid thinkers stop growing. Compound learners update beliefs when new evidence appears. They treat beliefs as tools, not identity. Updating prevents stagnation. Stagnation blocks compounding. Flexibility keeps learning pathways open. Social environment accelerates compounding. Conversations stimulate thinking. Explaining ideas strengthens retention. Hearing different perspectives expands mental models. Isolation reduces intellectual stimulation. Growth-oriented circles multiply cognitive development. Teaching is one of the strongest compound habits. Teaching forces retrieval. Retrieval strengthens memory. Teaching forces clarity. Clarity improves understanding. Teaching exposes gaps. Gaps guide future learning. Learning becomes targeted. Targeted learning accelerates growth. The compound learner does not measure success by volume consumed. They measure success by knowledge retained and integrated. One idea that stays and gets used is more valuable than 10 forgotten ones. Over years, this approach transforms the brain. Pattern recognition speeds up. Decision-making improves. Recall becomes reliable. Learning new skills becomes easier. Because knowledge is not scattered. It is connected. Connections create networks. Networks create intelligence in motion. Compounding also changes your emotional relationship with learning. Learning stops feeling heavy because you are not rebuilding foundations. You are expanding structures. Expansion is energizing. Restarting is exhausting. The compound brain gives you leverage. The world changes. Tools change. Industries change. But a mind that compounds adapts faster than change itself. You stop asking, "Can I learn this?" You start knowing, "I know how to learn anything." That confidence is not motivational. It is structural. It comes from years of reinforcement. The compound learner understands time differently. They are not trying to win today. They are building a brain that wins for decades. And when knowledge compounds, your advantage grows silently, while others plateau. You accelerate, while others struggle to catch up. You build on what already exists. This is not talent. This is not luck. This is structure plus time. A compound brain is the ultimate multiplier. And once you enter this cycle, growth becomes the default. Not a phase, not a goal, but your natural state. Next, we step into the final transformation. Not just what you do, but who you become when your mind performs at a higher level. Everything you've learned so far, attention, memory, systems, application, compounding, none of it becomes permanent until it becomes who you are. Skills can be learned. Techniques can be practiced. Habits can be built. But identity is what makes change last. Most people try to improve performance without upgrading identity. They say, "I want to focus better. I want to remember more. I want to learn faster." But underneath, they still see themselves as someone who gets distracted, someone who forgets things, someone who struggles with learning. The brain listens to that story, and the brain adapts to match it. Identity is the control center of behavior. Behavior repeated shapes neural pathways. Neural pathways shape ability. Ability reinforces identity. This loop runs whether you control it or not. A high-performance mind is not built by effort alone. It is built when the story you tell yourself changes. Instead of saying, "I'm trying to learn more," the identity shifts to, "I am someone who trains my mind." That subtle shift changes everything. Because now learning is not optional. It's aligned with who you are. You don't ask, "Do I feel like focusing today?" Identity removes internal debate. Debate drains energy. Certainty conserves it. High performers in any domain share one trait. They identify with the process, not just the result. A professional athlete doesn't say, "I hope I feel motivated to train." Training is part of who they are. A musician practices even on uninspired days. Practice is identity-driven. A high-performance mind works the same way. You don't wait to feel like thinking clearly. You build systems that support clear thinking because that's who you are. Identity also affects attention. If you see yourself as someone easily distracted, you tolerate distraction. If you see yourself as someone who protects focus, you design your environment differently. Identity shapes standards. Standards shape behavior. Behavior shapes cognition. Another identity shift, from consumer to creator. Consumers absorb. Creators transform. A high-performance mind does not just take in knowledge. It produces insights, writes, explains, builds, connects. Creation forces deeper processing. Deeper processing strengthens memory. Memory supports intelligence. Identity determines direction of mental energy. The high-performance identity also embraces challenge. Instead of thinking, "This is hard. Maybe I'm not good at this," the story becomes, "This is hard, which means I'm growing." Difficulty stops being threat. It becomes signal for neural adaptation. This shift reduces avoidance. Avoidance blocks growth. Engagement drives it. Identity also stabilizes discipline. Discipline feels hard when it depends on motivation. It feels natural when it aligns with identity. You don't struggle to brush your teeth, because someone who takes care of themselves is your identity. When someone who trains their mind becomes your identity, learning becomes automatic behavior. High-performance identity also includes emotional regulation. Stress, distraction, and setbacks are normal, but the identity does not collapse under them. The story is, I can reset. Resilience is identity-based. Without that identity, setbacks feel personal. With it, they feel temporary. Another powerful shift is long-term thinking. A high-performance mind is built over years, not days. Identity gives patience. Patience supports compounding. Compounding builds mastery. The person who constantly changes identity never compounds. They restart mentally over and over. Identity consistency enables growth consistency. Environment reinforces identity. You surround yourself with people who value growth. You consume content that sharpens thought. You design spaces that reduce friction. Your surroundings confirm your self-image. When environment and identity align, change accelerates. Without alignment, progress feels uphill. Self-talk also matters. Your inner dialogue becomes instructional, not critical. Instead of "I'm bad at remembering," you shift to "I am training recall." Instead of "I'm not smart enough," it becomes "I improve through repetition." Language directs attention. Attention shapes neural change. A high-performance mind also values recovery. Rest is not laziness. It is optimization. The identity recognizes that recovery supports performance. Sleep, breaks, and reflection are part of the system, not escape from it. Finally, identity determines persistence. When learning is a hobby, you quit when it feels hard. When learning is who you are, you continue. Consistency over time is the true differentiator. Anyone can be intense for a week. Few sustain identity for years. Years build mastery. Mastery builds confidence. Confidence reinforces identity. The loop strengthens. At this point, you are no longer someone trying to upgrade your brain. You are someone who lives in upgrade mode. Growth becomes default. Curiosity stays alive. learning becomes normal. Your mind becomes sharper, not by accident, but by design. And the most powerful part, once identity shifts, you don't have to push as hard, because the system runs itself. You no longer rely on willpower. You rely on alignment. Alignment between identity, habits, environment, and goals. That alignment creates effortless consistency. And consistency over time creates extraordinary cognitive power. You don't become a high-performance thinker in a single breakthrough moment. You become one the day your identity changes. From that moment on, every action reinforces the new self. And the brain, always adapting, begins to match the story you believe. This is the final upgrade. Not just better memory, not just better focus, but a mind that continues improving because growth is who you are. Now, we close the journey and turn this knowledge into lasting momentum. You started this journey with a simple idea: learn faster, remember longer. But what you discovered is something deeper. Your brain is not fixed. Your intelligence is not predetermined. Your limits are not permanent. Your mind is a living system, and systems can be upgraded. You now understand that memory is not luck. Focus is not personality. Learning is not talent. They are outcomes of method, environment, and identity. You learned how attention gates memory, how understanding beats repetition, how active training rewires the brain, how knowledge sticks through connection, how systems create intelligence, how application turns learning into power, how biology supports cognition, how technology can amplify or weaken you, how compounding makes growth exponential, and how identity locks it all in. This is not surface-level motivation. This is mental architecture. And architecture changes everything. Because once you know how the mind works, you stop fighting yourself. You stop saying, "Why can't I focus?" and start asking, "How do I design focus?" You stop blaming memory. You start building recall. You stop consuming knowledge. You start compounding it. This is the moment where most people do nothing. They feel inspired. They agree. They nod. And tomorrow, they go back to old patterns. Not because they are incapable, because identity pulls them back. So, this is your moment. Not to try harder, but to choose a new identity. Not someone who wants to improve, but someone who trains their mind daily. Small actions, daily contact with learning, daily moments of deep focus, daily retrieval, daily reflection. Nothing extreme, but consistent. Because consistency compounds, and compounding creates advantage no one sees coming. 1 month of this feels small. 1 year of this changes your mind. 5 years of this changes your life. Your brain is your ultimate multiplier. Careers change. Technology evolves. Markets shift. But the person who knows how to learn never becomes obsolete. Learning is the master skill. It unlocks every other skill. So, here is your challenge. Don't just listen. Apply one principle today. Protect your attention. Retrieve something from memory. Teach an idea out loud. Organize knowledge into a system. Small reps. Daily reps. That is how the brain upgrades. If this journey shifted how you see your mind, stay here, because this channel is not about noise. It's about building mental power. Subscribe if you're serious about growth. Save this audiobook and revisit it. The second listen will land deeper. And tell me in the comments which idea changed your perspective the most. Because awareness is the first step. Application is the second. Identity is the third. And once identity shifts, growth stops being effort. It becomes who you are. Your mind is capable of more than you've used. Now you know how to unlock it. The journey doesn't end here. This is where your real upgrade begins.